Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa. Welcome to Threshold of Hope, where we bring to you the writings of Pope John Paul the Great. Before we get to his writings, I want to mention that today is the feast of St. Justin Martyr. He was born around the year 103 AD and then died in 165. He was born to a Roman family. His father was a soldier stationed at Neapolis, which is now called Nablus on the West Bank in Palestine, Samaria. And in fact, the Grand Mosque there used to be the Church of St. Justin, probably built over the family home. But he was raised by his parents to study philosophy, and as was typical of the day, he traveled around to a lot of philosophers and saw different philosophers the philosophers themselves were not always very nice people. And he began to be very, disconcerted with them. And he met an old man in what's now Turkey in Asia Minor, near the city of Ephesus, who told him about Christ and how Christ is the philosophy. And so he listened to that old man and studied Scripture and became a Christian. And one of the things that he did, he's the first of the trend in the 2nd century for the apologists. These were theologians who would explain Christianity. For the most part, the Christians tried to stay under the radar, but they still were getting persecuted. So he thought the problem is that people don't understand what Christians really teach. So he began to engage in various debates. He debated a Jewish man in Ephesus named Trypho. And you can get that dialogue at our website, EW10.com, in the documents library. He also had a couple other defenses of the faith, which you can also get at our website, but those were directed toward the local pagans, especially including in Rome. And he had bested a pagan philosopher in one of the debates, and that man seems to be the one that turned him in to the Roman soldiers during the persecution of Marcus Aurelius. Interestingly enough, the only Roman emperor who was himself a philosopher, Marcus Aurelius, was the one who had St. Justin the philosopher executed around the year 165 AD. It's good to read his works because St. Justin also gives us the earliest recorded presentation of the Mass. He talks about how Mass was celebrated in the 2nd century. So it's very worthwhile taking a look at. And we also want to keep in mind our good friends over at Catholic Answers, whose programs are carried on our radio program, and all the other groups of lay and religious who are doing apologetics to defend our faith. In fact, tomorrow we'll have a great apologist on the show, Father Robert Spitzer, also a member of my order, the Jesuits. All right, now I want to take a look at some of your emails. And you can send us emails by writing to threshold@ewtn.com. Let's take a look at a couple. Dear Father Mitch, in the new translations of the Missal, why were the obvious errors not corrected, such as the third acclamation, when we eat this bread? We don't eat bread. That is, we eat the body of Christ. And after the acclamation, we offer you, Father, this life-giving bread. This is from Reverend Robert in Portland, Maine. Well, for one thing, that's what they had in Latin, and they translated it that way. Secondly, when they understand, they obviously do not understand this as bread, in the sense that it still has the essence of bread. But they're talking about the Eucharist as the bread of life. And they're thinking back to John chapter 6. I think that before the new translation comes out, you may want to, get in contact to make with the committee in charge of the translation, just to make sure that there is no confusion. You might want to pass that on to them, Father. All right, and then here's another one. Hi, Father Pacwa. Many people in our parish have a great concern. Our parish priest is sounding more and more Protestant in his homilies. He has a brother who is a minister in a Protestant church, and he's sounding a lot like him. He continuously discourages confessions, telling us during Mass that one need not do anything to preserve our salvation, as Jesus already died for us, and that is enough. This is only one example. We have heard him preach many things that are contrary to the teachings of the church. It really saddens me because I know many of the people who are new to the faith, and they are receiving such wrong information. It's been brought to his attention, but instead of admitting a mistake, he tells the person they didn't understand. But the greatest concern of all is because of the way he handles the body and blood of our Lord, we question if he even believes in the real presence of our Lord. This happens at every one of his masses. It is my understanding that letters have been sent to our bishop about this great concern, but it doesn't seem to be of any concern to anyone in the diocese. What are your thoughts on this, Brenda? Well, Brenda, first of all, it sounds to me as if the people in your parish are doing what they can to start to tell him that's the proper way. You go to him first. Keep that up. Keep that up. And secondly, what I would start doing is taking notes of those errors and put the date and the precise wording that he put. And with that in quotation marks, because you have it quoted, or if you need to, record it. I don't like doing that to somebody. But if he's clearly teaching contrarily to the faith, then make sure that you have him down accurately, that you're not being sloppy. You don't accuse somebody in a sloppy way of precise points of theology. So if you have to record it, then you have to record it. But I would especially want people to make sure that they have exact statements that the priest made in his homilies, and then send those in quotation marks to your bishop. And if it need be that you send it every week, then send it every week. Again, I don't like suggesting that, but if it is something where he is denying some elements of the faith or contradicting elements of the faith, in particular when it comes to the differences between us and some of the other Christian churches, then we have to be alert to that and make sure that we go ahead and let him know. You have to teach the Catholic faith. That's what we want here. In conscience, we come for Catholicism. And to teach us something contrary to what our conscience is craving and has a right to. That's the other thing. Canon law says that we have a right to the liturgy being celebrated correctly and the sermon being preached truthfully, along with Catholic truth. So you can't let him contradict your conscience on these things. So that would be my strong urging. All right. We are ready to deal with more of Pastores Dabo Vobis. We're getting close to the end of this, as well as close to the end of the year of the priest, year for priests. You can get a free electronic copy of Pastores Dabo Vobis on our website, which is ewtn.com. If you go to the website, go to the tab that says television, then click the television series. Then scroll down to Threshold of Hope. Click there, and this is linked under that page. So you'll have it there, okay? And you can put it in your computer, and you can read along with us from the computer, or you can print a copy out from your own computer. All right, so we are on paragraph 78. And this is entitled The Agents of Ongoing Formation. Remember, we've been talking throughout this chapter of Pastores Dabo Vobis about the importance of continuing ongoing education for priests. That the priests get formed, not just in seminary, but afterwards as well. So now by agents, what is this, secret formation agent? No, this is this means the people who do it. That word agent simply comes from the Latin word agere, ago agere, to do something or make something. And an agent is somebody who does or makes something. That's all. So, now he sets up the very realistic situation, not only for priests, but for so many of us who are not priests as well as priests. And it begins the conditions in which the ministry of priests, often in many places, that has to be carried out nowadays, does not make it easy to undertake a serious commitment to formation. I mean, think about it. Everybody has a lot going on. People work hard. They have a lot going on in their houses, with their families. And for any of us, it's not always so easy to keep up our own Catholic formation, whether we're priests or lay people. And so this is a problem of a very busy world. It's not a quiet, laid-back society anymore. It's very hyperactive. And for priests and for others too, of course, there's a multiplication of responsibilities. You're in charge of these 25 committees. And also there's a complexity of human life in general. It isn't simple. You can't just go down to the river and bring up a fish and cook it. Life is more complicated. You go to work and our jobs are more complicated and so on. And then, of course, when you think beyond that, the complexity of human life includes the changing social situation we have. Marriages are not so simple. Families are not so simple. How many times I come across young people, teenagers and college kids, who have multiple sets of step-parents, step-grandparents, aunts, uncles, and so on. It's complex. So you get the picture. Also, in the life of Christian communities in particular can be fairly difficult and complex, with the activism and anxiety that are features of vast areas of societies today. A lot of people feel anxious, and now in our culture in particular, there's a lot of depression. These are things that are very common. They're advertising depression medicine on television commercials because it's so common. They wouldn't advertise if they didn't have a lot of customers. And so this is why a lot of priests are deprived of time and energy they need to take heed to themselves. And by that, he's quoting St. Paul's first epistle to Timothy, chapter 4, verse 16, where St. Paul said to Timothy, who was himself a young new bishop, the bishop of Ephesus. He says to him, take heed to yourself and to your teaching. Hold to that, for by so doing you will save both yourself and your hearers. So Timothy needs to pay attention to himself so that he can then hold on to his teaching correctly. And that's one of the reasons why I also said what I did in regard to that priest who's teaching. He has to pay attention to his teaching, and people need maybe to help him, because it's not only his own soul that is at stake for teaching error, but it also may be that he's going to lead other people astray, which is exactly the point of that email. People are worried that they'll be led astray. So there's all these problems, lots of busyness. What's the Pope say? Because you're so busy, because of all this going on, you should increase the responsibility of priests to overcome the difficulties. So don't give me any whining. I'm too busy, I can't do it. It's all the more reason you have to work harder to overcome the difficulties and see the difficulties as a challenge to plan and carry out permanent formation. And that will respond appropriately to the greatness of God's gift to the priesthood. This is a great gift. And therefore, you have to respond to the challenge of not having any time and be extra good at doing that. And also to deal with the urgency of the demands and requirements of our times. So the Pope says, yes, I know. And again, when you hear the Pope say this, it's not as if he wasn't already overly busy himself. And he stayed overly busy until they either shot him, or he got sick with cancer, or with Parkinson's and then couldn't walk anymore. But as long as he could walk and talk, he did. So he was somebody who was pretty busy. But he himself, in his own personal life, always made time for more formation. During his vacation time, he would go to Castel Gandolfo, the Pope's summer residence, up in the hills. It's in a volcanic crater outside of Rome. And he would go up there and invite scientists to come explain to him what's going on in science. He would be updated. He's the Pope. He's infallible. And they wanted to deal with the stuff where he wasn't infallible and learn what he could from the scientists. So he was always being updated. If he can do it, the rest of us can too. It reminds me of a story from St. Francis de Sales, who was trying to teach all of his parishioners they needed to spend an hour in prayer every day. And the mayor of his town said, Excellency, I would love to be able to go ahead and do a holy hour, but I've got this to do, this to do, this to do, and I'm just so busy, I don't have time to get that in. So, don't think of me when you think of this. And the Bishop Francis de Sales said to him, wow, anybody as busy as you probably needs 2 hours. But John Paul would have the same mentality. So, those who are responsible for ongoing formation, who are they? Who's in charge? See, that's one of the questions. And he's going to make this as a point. The people responsible for the ongoing formation of priests are going to be found in the church as a communion. In other words, he does not want this task to be parceled out to some committee. Because when that happens, everybody can find an excuse not to listen to the committee. That's easy. Easy. And so he doesn't want that. He wants us to have a sense of the whole church. This flows from the whole church. This urging and demand for ongoing formation comes from the whole church as a communion of members, where all of us are bound to each other as members of a body are bound to the head. So it must be for us. So that in this sense of the church as communion, the entire particular church, and whenever he says that word particular church, he's talking about a diocese, okay, or eparchy. In this sense, the entire particular church has the responsibility under the guidance of the bishop to develop and look after the different aspects of the priest's permanent formation. Now he's getting into something dangerous here, because if you're not careful, if you say instead of a committee, everybody's in charge, what does that usually mean? Nobody's in charge. And nothing gets done. So you got to be careful of that. So what he's going to do is try to make that specific. Now, first of all, the bishop is the one who gives guidance to this. He's the one who should, as shepherd of the whole diocese, should have an overview. In fact, remember we said that the word for bishop in Greek is episkopos. And it comes from the same word we get scope. Scope something out. But it means to look over. Or so it's an overseer. All right? And he should have a view of the whole. That's the bishop's role, to get a picture of what's going on everywhere. All of us priests in the diocese can't see the whole picture, but that's his job. That's why we want him to give guidance to the formation of the priests. Now, again, one of the principles in asking everybody to be involved in this process is that priests are not there to serve themselves, but to serve the people of God. I didn't become a priest so I can put it on my resume. That would be crazy. A lot of other things you can put on your resume and they're not as much trouble. So that's not it. You have to be a priest for the sake of the people. And that's part of being in communion. Remember, he's talked a lot about how important it is for the priest to be in communion with the people and the people with the priest. And again, going back to that email, the idea of going to the priest first is part of that attempt to be in communion with him. So you don't just talk behind his back. But if you exhaust that, then you have to deal with the next stage, going to the bishop. So, ongoing formation in ensuring the human, spiritual, intellectual, and pastoral maturity of priests. Remember, those are the 4 components of formation that he has brought up again and again. Whether from the beginning to the end of life, the priest has to pay attention to these 4 developments. His human formation, that is, his ability to deal with other people in normal ways. To deal with his spiritual formation, so he's growing in prayer. His intellectual formation, so he's growing in theology and deeper understanding of what the church does teach. And then his pastoral formation, how he actually lives out the way of helping people with what he knows from the others. Okay? Those are the 4 areas. And that you want to ensure that the ongoing formation deals with all 4 aspects: the human, spiritual, intellectual, and pastoral. And they want to also see that they ensure the maturity of the priest in these areas. And that in doing the ministry, it leads to a constant and mutual exchange between the priest's life of faith and that of the laity. It's not that we priests give to the people and that's it. We're this big lake and things just keep pouring out of us. Rather, there's a back and forth. And, any number of times, priests who hear a lot of confessions or who give a lot of retreats will oftentimes be edified by the people who came to confession. They'll say, oh, these people are so good. And they're so honest. And so, even though they're confessing their sins, you can see the goodness and the humility that underlies that willingness to confess sins. And that builds up us priests, as well as, being there to absolve sins. So that's part of that. That's an example of that mutual back and forth and fruitful exchange between priests. But also in terms of the homilies, this parish that we talked about from the email again, they're listening to the priest, and they want to give back to them. Look, you have to teach the authentic faith. This is what the Catholic Church teaches. You're not doing that. And they're trying to give back to him. That's that mutual side as well, so that he can then give to them more fully. Indeed, the very relationship and sharing of life between the priest and the community will be a fundamental contribution to permanent formation. So that by this back and forth between the people and the priest, that itself contributes. And certainly, as I listen to various people, I hope I can be of help to the ones I counsel. But I'm also learning a lot about what's going on in our world by listening to them too. That's what he means by this mutual formation for each other. And but it should be done wisely and wisely made use of. So, and this won't be just isolated episodes or initiatives, but the whole ministry and the whole life of a priest will be this ongoing mutual back and forth. Don't think that even if a priest says, you don't know what you're talking about with disagreeing with my homily, because it was so brilliant. Even still, I guarantee you, he's listening. He may be defending himself against it. He may not know what's wrong and so on, but he's listening. And it does have an effect on him. So this is something that you should see as part of the whole life of priesthood. Now, the truth is that the Christian experience of persons who are simple and humble, the spiritual enthusiasm of people who truly love God, the courageous application of the faith to practical life by Christians in all kinds of social and civil tasks. In other words, people who live out the faith. These things are embraced by the priest. This is part of what we, and again, I love it when I see that. I'm impressed by it. Doctors, lawyers, business people, teachers, all the different professions, as they are involved in this back and forth, I, again, really appreciate that. That's important. And these are embraced by the priest. He, on his side, illuminates them, helps them to become more clear through his priestly ministry. He can preach the word and let the gospel illuminate what people are doing. He can bring the sacraments so that they're strengthened or forgiven, depending on the sacrament that they're receiving. But he's definitely going to have that kind of back and forth with the service. But he also will draw for himself a certain type of spiritual nourishment. And we priests do. Again, almost every priest I know would say that he really gains a lot from the folks, from you who confess and listen to sermons and comment. Even the doubts, crises, and hesitations in the face of all kinds of personal or social situations. And people have those. People have a lot of doubts and difficulties. They come across them and they tell us about them. Marriages are tough and raising kids are tough, all that. So this is the kind of thing you have to deal with. Also, there are temptations to rejection or despair, especially when somebody's experiencing pain, illness, and death. All these difficult situations that you lay people invite us priests to share. You ask us to share. We're there when your family members die. We're there when they're born and get baptized. We're there for first communions and marriages. You invite us into your lives in very real situations. All these difficult situations that people find in the path as Christians are fraternally lived and sincerely suffered in the priest's heart. I know I and other priests I know bring these situations to our own prayer when we make our holy hours. When we offer our masses, we're considering you and what's going on. And when he seeks answers for other people's problems, he is going to be constantly spurred on to find them, first of all, for himself. Because, again, we don't know everything by any means. Of course not. We're human beings. But when you bring up new problems, it motivates us to learn about them. I had a roommate in graduate school, and he had all these crises of faith. And he would bring me his questions and such. And I didn't always know the answer by any means. But because of that, I kept looking up the answers to the issues he brought up. And not only did it help him return to the Catholic faith, but I keep using those answers a lot of other places too, because other people had his questions. So that's the way it is. All right, we're going to take a little break, and we'll come back, get some questions from our studio audience, as well as continuing on with this document. So please stay with us. We have a nice little group here from different parts of the country, and we'd love to have you come and join us here on a pilgrimage. If you have a chance to come through Alabama, then please stop here, and we'd love to include you and host you around. You can contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. That's 205-271-2966. Or go to our website, www.ewtn.com, and they'll help you with places you can stay and scheduling of programs, masses, both here and in Hansville, and you're welcome to visit both. We love it. Enjoying your stay over here so far?
Very much.
Yeah, good. That's what we like to hear. Glad to have you. Also, speaking of pilgrimages, I'm planning to lead a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. That will be December 15th to the 26th. And we will, God willing, be celebrating midnight Mass on Christmas Eve in Bethlehem. So that's one of the things we plan on. If you can join us or you're interested in finding out more about it, please call 1-800-554-4556. That's 1-800-554-4556. 888-848-5556, or go to my website, www.fathermitchpacwa.org, and I'll have the info on that trip. Okay? All right, let's go to this studio audience here that we have with us and ask them. First of all, sir, where are you from?
I'm from Greenville, South Carolina.
Welcome. And what is your question?
Well, number one, we're happy to be here.
Good, good.
And the question in regards to the parishioner or parishioners who were unhappy with what the father was saying from the pulpit. Mm-hmm. They had tried many times to get his attention and complained that they thought what he was saying wasn't what they wanted to hear. So they took the time to think about sending a letter to the bishop. Mm-hmm. And when they did that, that's all well and good, but in doing so, I think they should have at least sent a copy of that letter to the priest.
That's not a bad idea to send it to the priest. I have no problem with that. I think that that's a good idea. Now, they would have already gone to him, and so they would have let him know their issue. But then they would, they could send a written copy of that. And, especially if it's a number of people, so that it's not one person who comes across as a crank, but a number of people who are concerned that this is not Catholic teaching. So this is one of the things. And it would help, too, if they bring up where he contradicts the catechism and or the scripture. That'd be very useful. Okay? Thank you. Sure. Yes, ma'am, where are you from?
I'm originally from the Philippines, but my husband and I, we came from Baltimore, Maryland.
Great. Welcome. And what is your question?
Thank you. My question is, it's in regards to the current crisis we're facing now, mm-hmm. and I'm just concerned, how does that affect our priestly vocation?
Yeah, the number of ways in which it affects priests and the vocation to the priesthood. First of all, we priests are, very upset and saddened, because it's not just because that looks badly on us. I mean, we genuinely feel horrible for any people who were abused. That's they need to be the focus, and concern for them. And many of us have expressed concern. Would such people ever want to go back to confession again? Would they be afraid to, or so angry that they don't confess their sins? This is a horrible scandal, and that harms their souls. So that's one of the things that's bothersome to me and others. But amazingly enough, a lot of young men are entering seminaries all over the country. They really are growing. And people, I've even heard interviews from the press that, what about the priest scandal? Why are you doing that? I said, look, because of the priest scandal, they need us. We're going to go in there, and we're going to do what we can, and be the kind of priest that we're supposed to be. So that's been one of the responses. Now that's not good enough. We want none of this to ever happen again. That's for sure. And it really has been quite remarkable how much of an effect the bishops have had. Once they really took the bull by the horns, then they began to really just see a total change in this. But there are a lot of old cases that keep coming out now, and most of them are pretty old. They're not. You don't see many recent cases because the bishops handle it a lot better. Yes, ma'am. Where are you from?
From Irvine, California.
Great.
And I agree, we have to be here for the church when they suffer the greatest problems rather than when they're the most popular. But anyway, do you see a rise in the vocation of deacons because of Benedict's call for us to be evangelists? And how is the church, the
number of vocations to the diaconate really varies by region. Some regions have more. And some already have had so many vocations that they're slowing it down. But it really is something that varies from one region to another. But it seems to be overall fairly steady. I haven't seen a huge increase, at least in the places I travel, but I see a steady steady flow of new deacon candidates. I was just giving a retreat at the Malvern Retreat House in Malvern, Pennsylvania, a couple weeks ago, and there was a group of men who were preparing for the permanent diaconate there. So, that was, and there was a good-sized group. They had a good teacher, and also it was, there's really a lot of very important influence from the deacons, and that's been a good thing. Yes, sir. And you, where are you from?
I'm from Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne, I've been there.
Have you?
Yes, I have.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I know it. I liked it. Your cathedral, I think, is beautiful.
It is.
It really is. Anyway, your question?
The question I have is that very rarely do we hear at church or in the homilies the life issues, particularly the issue of contraception raised, and I'm wondering whether this is an area where priestly formation needs to be increased.
Great question. In fact, oftentimes I heard, not so much recently, but say 25 years and more ago, priests were discouraged, seminarians were discouraged from talking about it because it'll make people uncomfortable. Well, that's not the only norm. Back in this country, in the 1960s, when the issue of race relations was brought up as a very important issue of charity and social justice in our country, that also made people uncomfortable. We had to do it. And this is the same thing we must do with dealing with issues of, as you say, birth control and other issues about life like abortion. And still, there's some priests that say, well, I don't want to make everybody uncomfortable. But overall, I think that depending on how it's done, that's where the pastoral formation needs to go on as well, so that we say it not in a hellfire and brimstone way. In fact, the pro-death forces, the people who are against, life and who are not in favor of keeping us abortion-free and such, they would like us to be judgmental, hellfire, damnation, condemnatory, and all this. That's not what most priests feel or think. We want to help people to come to know the fullness of what should be done. So that, it's much more pastoral. But we just need to also make sure that when we explain it, it's explained in a pastoral way so that we're addressing the needs of those persons and their families, as well as presenting without compromise the teaching of the church on life and the pro-life issues. People always ask about my wings. This was a pro-life award that I received from the Knights of Columbus in Texas. And it's called the ACE Award. That's why I use wings to symbolize it. And one of the things about these wings and the ACE Award is that it's meant to stand for being pro-life without accommodation, without compromise, without exception. So it's an acronym, for that. And this, I'm honored to wear that because that is the way we must be. Deal with the pro-life issues without accommodation or compromise. But we can do it with pastoral gentleness and care, being good shepherds for wandering sheep. All right, we are still in paragraph 78.5, where, again, the Pope reiterates, the entire people of God, in each and every one of its members, can and should offer precious assistance to the ongoing formation of its priests. So when you ask us questions, when you present your various problems and difficulties, you're helping our ongoing formation. And even if we don't know, again, I hope that most priests feel as I do in this. I've been, I've experienced my ignorance for over 60 years. And I'm fairly comfortable with saying that I'm ignorant. I'm used to it by now. and so then we should admit, I don't know that, but I'm going to do more research on it. So this is an important thing. And in this sense, people should see that the priests are allowed time for study and prayer. That's the other side of this. You can ask us questions. But give us time to go do some work to study and understand. You can't go, and I got, we have to. Or one of my favorites is when I or other priests are trying to make a holy hour in church. Oh, Father. And the worst is when I've been in the chapel here. It says, oh, Father, we're visiting. Can I just get a picture? I'm trying to listen to Jesus here, I don't want to so much talk to him. I just want to listen. He doesn't need to know what I think, but I need to find out what he thinks. You got to give us some time to do this so that we can do this. It's very important. And that's part of the respect for our need to learn more. Part of the way that you show that you care that we learn more is by letting us have time to do it. They should ask of them that for which Christ has sent them and not require anything else. In other words, Christ sent us priests for some specific reasons, to proclaim the gospel and to administer the sacraments. And we can't do everything. I can't run a garage. I don't have the tools or the time. And a lot of other things I just can't do. Don't have the time to do it. So, try to, that's where the ministry of the lay people is so important. Y'all can do some of these tasks really well. And we'll try to work on doing what we do well. And that means having time to study. Also, the laity should offer help in the various aspects of the pastoral mission, especially in those related to human development and works of charity, so that the priest isn't the only one out there making sandwiches for the poor people that come to the door. The priest isn't the only one distributing food or gathering it up or doing the other little things that have to be done. Everybody needs to pitch in. So again, we're all in this in communion with Christ and one another, and we're all cooperating to make it possible for us to serve our Lord. And they should establish cordial and brotherly relations with the priests, helping them remember that they are not to lord it over the faithful. All right, that's something that we see Paul writing in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24, where he says about himself, not that we lord it over your faith, we work with you for your joy, for you stand firm in your faith. We priests aren't there to order you around. Now, that's not what he's asking, or I would be asking. But rather, as again he says in chapter for 2 Corinthians 1:24, that we work with them for their joy. And that this mutual cooperation is so that all of us can experience joy. And the particular church's responsibility for the formation of its priests is specific and depends on different members, starting with the priest himself. So, first of all, he sets us up that everybody in the church, everybody in the diocese has to be concerned and involved in making it possible for the priest to have continuing formation. So everybody is an agent. And there are different ways in which we're agents, letting the priest do his work, let him study, and not making more demands than he can do, but helping out and pitching in to do things so that he can keep up and study. But now he's going to make a switch. Let's take a look at the specific individuals, okay, who as individuals are responsible. First person responsible for formation of priests is the priest himself. The individual priest is the person primarily responsible in the church for ongoing formation. If a priest doesn't want to learn, if he thinks he knows it all already, then he's got a problem. You can't do that. You need to make sure that you want to learn more. And that, in fact, he says, truly each priest has the duty to be faithful to God's gift. That is the gift given at ordination. And in terms of being faithful to the gift of the priesthood that received at ordination, and in order to be able to respond to the daily call for conversion. You see, In Luke's gospel in particular, our Lord said back in chapter 9, pick up your cross daily and follow me. It's not just, oh, I decided to follow Christ, and that's it. No, every day I need more conversion. Because every day I'd like to be somewhat selfish. I'd like to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it. And I need ongoing conversion away from that selfishness. And so many other things that we need conversion for. So the priest needs to be faithful to the gift of the priesthood and to the call to daily conversion that comes with the gift of the priesthood itself. So if you feel tempted to be arrogant about, well, I'm a priest and you're not, that's actually there might be some times where the priest has to say that. I remember back in the 70s and 80s, sometimes there were people who said, you just stand there and say the words of the institution and we'll do the rest of it. No. I'm the priest. And it's not that I'm saying that because you're not. It's because, and I'm lording it over somebody. But you don't have the authority to do that. As Glenda the Good Witch said to the other one, you have no power here. Be gone. So, so that's one of the things that we have to be rooted in, that ongoing conversion. And the regulations and norms established by the church authority and the example given by other priests are not enough to make permanent formation attractive. So the bishop can tell you, you've got to go to these classes. Other priests might also give you a good example because they're studying and they're learning more and they're keeping up. But that's not enough if the priest himself doesn't want to go ahead and learn more. All the good example and all the rules won't change that heart. He has to make his own decision to make permanent formation attractive. And that is, he has to become convinced of its need. I do need to keep learning more. There's plenty around there. And also he's determined to make use of the opportunities. Yeah, I know I need to learn more, but I'm too busy. No, you have to make a decision. When an opportunity comes, I'm going to take it. I'm going to learn what I can. And at the times and in the forms in which it comes. So lectures that come along the way, you go to them. And classes, etc. One of the other things he wants to bring up, though, is that ongoing formation keeps up one's youthfulness of spirit. One of the things about people who think they know everything already is that they tend to be kind of stale. Sort of like clothes that have been in the hamper for a week. It's not pleasant, is it? And it's not a place I stick my head. It's stale smelling in there. Whereas this ongoing formation is what keeps us fresh and youthful, so that you realize how little you know and you keep wanting to learn more. And that's a great thing. And you can't impose that from outside. The bishop can't say, you got to be more youthful in your approach. No, you have to decide. I am still young enough to keep learning more. I don't know everything at all. And as my father said to me from the time I was a little boy, said the more you know, the more you realize how little you know. That's true. Only those who keep ever alive their desire to learn and grow can be said to enjoy this youthfulness. As opposed to many young people, many youths in our own culture who are boring. You know why? They lost their sense of curiosity. They want to act like they already know it all. And so if you correct them, whatever. They don't want to learn more because that would mean they're not so totally cool to the max, dudes and dudettes, that you really understand and know everything. And I'm probably speaking things that are way out of date anymore. But still, this, to real youthfulness to be there, you have to be curious and desire to know and retain it. It's very important. Now, after the priest is the responsibility of the bishop, and with the bishop, the responsibility of the whole presbyterate. That is, all the priests of the diocese together. Remember, that word presbyterate means the collection of priests for the whole diocese. The bishop's responsibility is based on the fact that the priest received their priesthood from him. He's the one that ordained them and made them priests. And they share his pastoral solicitude and care for the people of God. So the bishop is responsible for ongoing formation. And the purpose of that ongoing formation is to ensure that all his priests are generously faithful to the gift and ministry of the priesthood. So it's not just learning any and everything. I think all the priests in the diocese ought to have a whole great course in flying kites. No. How is that going to help their ministry? That's the bishop's focus. He has purpose, and that's what it should be. And that they also help them realize that they are priests, such as the people of God wishes to have and has a right to have. The people of God have a right. And that's not very often that canon law says that we have rights. But one of the rights we have is the priesthood, to exercise the priesthood well. So this responsibility leads the bishop, in communion with the whole presbyterate, all the priests, to outline a project and establish a program to ensure that ongoing formation is there and that it's not haphazard. It's not whatever just happens to come along, but it's organized, it's systematic, and deals with subjects, and it unfolds by stages, and you keep learning with a program in mind. For instance, I was with an archbishop from Italy, and he was saying how the priests there have been very much involved in learning issues of the social teachings of the church, especially for people who are in their 20s and 30s. And 40s, people who are often neglected. The stuff for the youth, stuff for the elderly, but we neglect them, and they need formation so they can bring their faith into their business, politics, etc. So they've been working just on that as a program to address those people. That's what he means by this. And also, besides that, the bishop has the responsibility of seeing that the priests are there, and the bishop should be present in person and take part in the formation himself in a friendly and interested way. Again, just because you're ordained bishop doesn't mean you know everything either. They learn more too. Often it'll be suitable for the bishops of different dioceses to cooperate and do this together. And they should have in-service training courses in the Bible and in theology, pastoral studies, sometimes have a week where they live together and do something, or a conference on a series at different times. We'll say once a week and so on. There are various ways to do it. He just wants to make sure that the bishops take that responsibility. And to fulfill his responsibility in this field, the priest will also ask for help from the theological and pastoral faculties or institutes, seminaries, offices and federations, from the priests and religious and faithful who are involved in priestly formation. In other words, contact the local experts. There are people, I was contacted by our bishop to write a book so that there could be Bible studies throughout this diocese on St. Paul during the year of St. Paul. So that's what the bishop asked, so I did that. These are the kind of ways in which you tap into the different resources. Also, families have a very important role to play. The ecclesial communities, that is the prayer groups and such, led and guided by priests, look to the families because the families are domestic churches. And also, they're going to be supportive of the priest's ongoing formation as he learns more about the Institute. And his own family can help out. They can contribute to him by encouraging him in his vocation and helping him to nourish it, and also encouraging him to grow and develop in his vocation. The family that the priest comes from should show respect and remain faithful, encouraging witnesses of his mission, and support the priest's mission and share it with devotion and respect. And in that way, the family helps to bring about God's plan and to fulfill God's plan so the priest is able to do the things that he needs to do. Everybody then in their different ways helps out. And may God bless us in these tasks. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.